Continuing our journey in the retouching series, today we're going to explore the first of two tutorials that will cover the technique of dodge and burn. This crucial step in retouching has many uses, and there's a few different ways of getting the job done. Let's take a brief look at what you'll find in today's tutorial. Creating those shadows, a little bit more white through here, and softening it out just a little bit, showing us that transition. And our eyes begin to complete the equation of three dimensions. New layer, or I could hit Shift Control N or Shift Command N for new if you're on a Mac. That'll bring up this dialog. You can name it Dodge and Burn. I'm going to be painting white onto this mask to reveal it. And I'm just going to simply paint in that area. Again, this is considered a local dodge and burn. And I'm just making that area just a little bit brighter. And I'm not going to hire you by saying, well, first and foremost, before I give you a barrel of cash, I need to know, do you do local dodge and burn? Do you do it with a gray adjustment layer? Do you use those stupid Hey folks, welcome back to the channel. I'm David Bird with Reimagined. I'm an award-winning photographer and Photoshop artist that specializes in fantasy composite art. Dodge and burn is one of the oldest methods of retouching known to photography. In the days of film, it was used in the darkroom to either increase or lessen the exposure of the film, therefore making the image brighter or darker in key areas. This helped to increase the contrast in the image, the dynamic range, and in a sense, give the image more depth and dimension. In the realm of digital photography and Photoshop, the goals are the same, but the methods to achieving them vary both in tools and in output. Let's talk about the overview of today's tutorial and also note the color code at the bottom of the screen. First, we'll do a brief demonstration on how highlight and shadow can create a sense of depth and three-dimensionality in a two-dimensional medium. Then we'll move to our portrait image and discuss the difference between local and global in regard to dodge and burn. Finally, we'll finish the tutorial today with a demo of local dodge and burn using two different methods in Photoshop to achieve this step. You can skip ahead in the tutorial if you wish by referencing the color code below corresponding to the overview we just discussed. Before we dive into Photoshop, you can help us grow this channel on YouTube and reach our first goal, to gain 1,000 subscribers. If you like the content you find today, then please give the video a like, share it with others, and consider subscribing to the channel. New content debuts each week to the channel covering education in photography and Photoshop, and when you subscribe, make sure to hit the notification bell so you'll be shown our content when you return to YouTube. Thank you so much for your support, and now let's dive into the Photoshops and let's get our learn on. And I can't believe I said, let's get our learn on. Like, dive into the Photoshops and get our learn. That's not funny. And these transitions, every time I try to think of something funny to say, let's talk about highlight and shadow in Photoshop in correspondence with three colors. There are three colors that designate light in Photoshop. That's white, black, and gray. The color gray itself is made up of 50% white and 50% black. So when you look at white in Photoshop, again, in respect to light, that's the highlights within an image. Black is the shadows and gray are the midtones. That corresponds to light. So looking at this image, we can use white and black to complete the equation of light and create a sense of three-dimensionality. So this circle is filled with 50% gray. I'm going to make a selection around it, and I'm going to start painting black at the base of it with a flow of 20% on my brush, just a little bit like that. I'm going to paint some white on the corresponding side. Then I'm going to change the flow of my brush to, let's say, 3%. And I'm going to start feathering out this effect, painting a little bit more shadow into the area here, a little bit more black, creating those shadows, a little bit more white through here, and softening it out just a little bit, showing us that transition. And our eyes begin to complete the equation of three dimension. If we think about it from the perspective of photography, the light source is up here. It's coming down. It's hitting the top of this orb. It's white. As the light travels around the orb, it begins to fall off. So it turns gray and then black. If we further complete the illusion or the equation of light, we can paint some black at the base and we let it follow the actual direction of that light that we just talked about. And now we have a shadow that this orb is creating within the scene. This is the purpose and point of dodge and burn. We are introducing artificial highlights and shadows into an image that already has highlight and shadow. It's an image of a three-dimensional object, a person or a place or a thing, right? I feel like I'm on Wheel of Fortune. Anyway, so the idea is that it already has highlight and shadow in the image. We can use artificial highlight and shadow to augment the existing ones or to change them. So we change the sense of three dimension. So let's go to the portrait image that we've been working on in the retouching series. And now let's talk about the difference between local dodge and burn. Local dodge has two different methods, or two different outputs, let's say. First and foremost, local dodge and burn is at the pore level. The pores of the skin, not financial pore. So the pore level, we can see here that there are some pores within her skin that are just a little bit darker than the surrounding area. Again, from a sense of three dimension, the skin at the top of the surface is a little bit brighter, and as light travels down, it gets a little bit darker. So to do a local dodge and burn, we would come to little small pores that are just a little bit darker, and we would dodge them to make them brighter, so that they would be the same luminosity value of the surrounding areas of the skin. Therefore, the illusion is completed for our eyes that there isn't a darker ridge of a pore, it's all the same surface. If there's a section of skin that's too bright, then we can just burn that a little bit and make it a little bit darker to even it out so that we don't feel like there's an area of skin that's raised up that's too hot or too high or too bright. We're introducing artificial highlight and shadow into this image that already has highlight and shadow. Again, augmenting it, or trying to repair it or overcome the existing highlight and shadows that are already there. Local dodge and burn also can be done in bigger areas than just pores, and it can be done from a perspective of working in zones. So when you look at an image right through here, let's say, this area of her skin tone is just a little bit darker than the surrounding areas through here. Now, this is a designation of three dimension of her face. Light is traveling and hitting here. This area of her face is a little bit further extended out in three dimensions. And the skin comes down a little bit and then immediately comes right back up at the top of her lip through here. Highlight and shadow, just like the orb that we worked with. So again, a local dodge and burn, we could use this area of skin where it's just a little bit darker. We could start to dodge it, making it just a little bit brighter. So that again, this entire area will feel like the same luminosity values of the surrounding areas of the skin. That's a local dodge and burn. A global dodge and burn is to look at the image globally, fully out here, and start to use highlight and shadow to augment the existing ones to create that sense of three dimension. A global dodge and burn works with the existing highlight and shadow in the image. So we have shadows through here on her neck that show us the light is wrapping around, just like the orb. It's brighter through here, then it starts to fall off in the midtones, and then it gets darker through here. We can augment this. We can make this feel like her neck is a little bit more three-dimensional. Her collarbone, her shoulder, we can make this shadow a little bit deeper. We can make the corresponding highlight a little bit brighter. We can do the same on her face, begin to sculpt it, using highlight and shadow, working with the existing highlights and shadow in this image, instead of trying to overcome them by fixing skin texture and pores and so forth. Let's talk very briefly about the use of dodging and burning. I guess historically in Photoshop and in digital photography, dodging and burning is first and foremost used to clean up skin. And there's varying methods to do it. There are some tools in the tools palette, and I don't even actually want to go over there and show them to you, because they're probably the original dodge and burn tools that were put into Photoshop. I've been using Photoshop since version 4, and there are many different methods of dodging and burning, and they have evolved over the years as Photoshop continues to evolve. I mean, digital photography has not been around for hundreds of years. It's been around for a handful of years, respectively, to that. So as these techniques continue to evolve, these different methods come into play. One of the methods, again, used for skin retouching, dodging and burning, is to use the gray layer method. And I'm going to show you how to do that, and then we're going to demonstrate that, and then the method that I actually use for dodging and burning. But let me state that when I dodge and burn, Very rarely am I doing any kind of local dodge and burn, or more specifically, am I using dodging and burning to repair skin? No. This is why I like the process of frequency separation, and this is why I've put this tutorial on dodging and burning after the frequency separation tutorials in the channel. So if you're new to the channel and you just found this video, please look at the videos above and visit the other videos on frequency separation, because if I have to repair skin, both the texture of the skin, the pores of the skin, and the overall flow of the colors to make everything smooth skin, I prefer to do it during the frequency separation process. In my opinion, there is no right or wrong way of doing this. Famous professional retouchers, two things. One, they get paid a lot of money to do their job because they're really good at it. And not just knowing the techniques, but understanding the finesse and control of being able to retouch an image to the point that it doesn't look like it's been retouched. Number two, they do use methods like the gray layer that I'm going to demonstrate for you. And they also use curves adjustment method layers, which is the method that I prefer. Dodging and burning, again, for skin retouch, I don't use it. For skin retouching, I use it globally to augment the existing highlight and shadow in the image to create that sense of 3D. So this layer is painted gray that we can see here. It is on a blending mode of overlay. The blending mode of overlay tells Photoshop to ignore the color gray. So we have filled this layer artificially with midtones, and then we can paint white or black directly onto this layer. And since it's above the background layer, it's going to make things simply brighter or darker because we're painting directly. We're painting white directly onto the layer, or black directly onto the layer, but at a flow of like 1% or 2%. Let me show you how to make the layer itself. So I'm going to come up to Layer, New Layer, or I could hit Shift Control N or Shift Command N for new if you're on a Mac. That'll bring up this dialog. You can name it Dodge and Burn. You have some other options, but mode. This is the layers blending mode. If you drop it down to overlay, a new option to check is activated, which says Fill Overlay Neutral Color, fill it with 50% gray. If we check it and hit OK, a new layer has been created in the layer stack. It has a layer blending mode of overlay, and it's filled with 50% gray, so Photoshop is ignoring that color, which is why we can still see her face. If this was on a blending mode of normal, it would look like that, and that's a little bit of a spoiler, and I'll explain what that is right now. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this one because I've already started the process on a gray 50% layer. Zooming in, doing a local dodge and burn. So let me zoom back out just a little bit so that we can see. This is the after, this is the before. Painting simply white and black directly onto this layer at a flow of 1%. I went through and I looked for skin pores that are just a little bit darker, like these, and started painting white on it to make them brighter, and found other different pores that are a little bit brighter, and I painted black to make them a little bit darker to the surrounding areas themselves. And just to give you a brief demonstration of what that is, this layer is selected. I'm going to hit B for brush. I'm going to change my flow to 1% by hitting Shift, 0, and 1. And I'm going to paint white. And again, I'm just looking for any pores that are just a little bit darker. And I'm going pore by pore. I'm using a Wacom Intuos Pro tablet that has pressure sensitivity. So the lighter that I interact the pen with the tablet, the lighter the tools are going to interact in Photoshop. And I'm just going to go pore by pore, cleaning this up. As you can see, this can be a very time-consuming process. This is one of the reasons why professional retouchers get paid a lot of money if they're good at their job. And I, just so you understand and know, I have done professional retouching for people, for clients who send me their work, and I send them a set of rates or a quote, and they pay me, and I will use local dodge and burn to go through and clean up as much as possible because I'm getting paid to do that level of a retouch to an image. For some of my personal work that I push out to just social media and nothing else, I don't do a local dodge and burn. Very rarely do I ever do it because I prefer to do this process in the frequency separation step. But again, just to show you, we've went through and we've just simply lightened some of these darker pores. And we could do the same thing with painting black onto this layer, looking for areas within the skin that are a little bit darker. But let's look at the demonstration of using the curves adjustment method to do a local dodge and burn in a bigger area, and then we'll be finished with today's tutorial. We'll do the global dodge and burn in the next tutorial in part 2 of this series, and show you the global dodge and burn, as well as how I use that as an artistic process to start augmenting the image just a little bit more to give it a very stylized look, a painterly look, if you will. Wink, wink. So make sure you subscribe to this channel so that you'll know when that video is live on YouTube. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that off, and I'm going to make the curves adjustment layers for dodging and burning. So I'm going to come down to the adjustment window, and I'm going to make 2 different curves adjustments. The first one up top, we'll relabel this one to be called dodge, and then the one on the bottom we'll relabel to be called burn. I'm going to turn off the dodge layer, and I'm going to come to the curve itself and make an anchor point. This is for the burn, and we're just going to simply bring this down and make everything just a little bit darker. Then I'm going to invert the mask. This is a white mask, which means reveal all. So the entire burn effect of this curves adjustment layer is being revealed right now. I don't want that. I want to be able to paint it in where I want to see it. So inverting the mask by hitting Control or Command and the letter I for invert will turn it to a black mask or a hide all. And I'll turn on the dodge, come here to the icon for the curve itself, make an anchor point, and just simply bring it up and make it just a little bit brighter, and then invert the mask. Now I can start painting white onto these masks to reveal them. I prefer to start with the burn because it is easier for me to see the shadows within the image, and I can start to paint those effects in. But before I do, it's helpful to give yourself a helper layer, if you will. And it's one that gets us back to the core principles of what we just talked about with luminosity values in white, black, and gray, and that's to make a black and white adjustment layer. So now it forces your eyes to only see white, black, and gray within the image. And then therefore we can begin to see the properties of highlight, shadow, and midtone, and where we can either locally dodge and burn them to overcome issues within the image, or globally dodge and burn to augment the existing highlight and shadow that we see within the image. So again, as I mentioned before, this little area of skin here that's just a little bit darker, let's go ahead and, even though I like to start with the burn, let's make this just a little bit brighter. So I'm going to change the flow of my brush to 3%, and I'm going to be painting white onto this mask to reveal it. And I'm just going to simply paint in that area. Again, this is considered a local dodge and burn, and I'm just making that area just a little bit brighter. And again, from the perspective of highlight and shadow and midtones, white, black, and gray, it's starting to look like the overall white value of the skin everywhere else in that luminosity perspective. So I know that now this is roughly the same perspective, the same brightness, if you will. Again, I can come here and start to paint that just a little bit more to make it white. I can come to the burn, and this gets more into a global dodge and burn because now I'm working with the existing shadow to make it just a little bit darker. So this is like, consider it like spoilers, a teaser for episode 2, dodge and burn. So I can make it just a little bit darker and it starts to augment it. I'm working with it. So from that perspective of local dodge and burn, I went through the area and just lightened up everything that I see. In areas like through here, this highlight that we can see that's just a little too bright, I can come to the burn, and again, from a local dodge and burn perspective, I'm just painting a little bit of white onto this mask, which is quote unquote burning the image and making it just a little bit darker through that highlight itself. I can go to the other highlights that may be too strong, and I can locally dodge and burn it. In this case, I'm burning it and I'm bringing it down. Now, something to point out though is that if there is any pores in her skin, not financially, skin, if they're dark, because they're a deeper pore, then it's going to, when we do a local dodge and burn like this, it's going to make them darker. I want to stress and reiterate again, I don't do dodging and burning most of the time on a local dodge and burn. I prefer to repair the skin and the colors in frequency separation. And this is just my opinion, but there is no right or wrong answer as to which one of these ways is better. It's results based. It's ultimately the technique that you can utilize to its fullest to produce your best work. And one of the things that has changed in digital photography over the years is that as new techniques, as new methods of retouching came into existence, there were folks who were reticent to embrace those new techniques, just as much as people who were film photographers were reticent to embrace digital photography. Sometimes with a lot of a lot of animosity. So as new techniques have come into play in digital retouching, it is my opinion that you find the one that makes the most sense to you, the one that you can do your best work with. Because when you present a great portfolio to clients and show your best work, you need to use the right methods to achieve that best work. And that's what they're going to hire you on. They're not going to hire you by saying, well, first and foremost, before I give you a barrel of cash, I need to know, do you do local dodge and burn? Do you do it with a gray adjustment layer? Do you use those stupid tools in Photoshop? Or are you using curves adjustment methods because you subscribe to Reimagined on YouTube and you like their videos and you help them reach 1,000 subscribers? Huh? Tell me right now, because I'm not going to hire you unless you use them. Right? You understand what I'm saying? Use the method that makes the most sense to you. Your best work will flow through that, and you'll create wonderful results. I like frequency separation to do those local dodge and burns and those repairs, but I use dodge and burn on a global level. So let's take a step back and just kind of recap what we've talked about today. So again, looking at the example of highlight and shadow with creating an orb in Photoshop, where we're using white, black, and gray, we can understand how light comes into play in Photoshop and how we can ultimately use, in a manner of speaking, white and black and gray to create light in the dodge and burn process. Local dodge and burn is working on the pore level of the skin. So the pores themselves that are a little bit darker, we can brighten them up with the dodge. Areas of the skin that are too bright, we can burn them down, making them just a little bit darker. We can do that in the pore level. We can do it in certain sections within the zone of the image. And then we can go on to the global dodge and burn, which works with the existing highlights and shadows within the image to augment them and give that sense of 3 dimensions. And ultimately, that's the goal of dodge and burn, is to give the image a sense of 3 dimension, to augment it, or to repair it so that it completes that journey and that visual look to create some great artwork. Thank you for watching this tutorial. Again, if you like the content you find in it, please give the video a like. Help us reach those 1,000 subscribers. If you're a photographer, if you're a retoucher, you're a digital artist, you've scrolled by and you've found this, please share this video with others. Help me grow this channel, I implore you, because I love doing this. I love teaching. I teach at conferences, I write for a magazine. I've been doing this job for a very long time. It means so much to me to be able to give the knowledge that I have over this journey of digital photography and how digital photography and retouching methods have evolved. So thank you so much for your support. Consider subscribing. And until next time, I will see you out there in the world of Photoshop.